So maybe we should start. Okay, welcome to the 122nd Airhacks TV, the best prepared episode in the history of Airhacks. And we have, I think, a veteran here, Peter Ballas, and he said he was one of the first Airhacks attendees. So there was airhacks.com, which is, I think, older. These were the workshops. And then the Airhacks TV happened. So Airhacks TV always were question and answers. And the idea of this show was to, instead answering questions via email, I will gather them the entire month and answer them once a month. So this was the Airhacks TV. And the Airhacks.com, the workshops at Airhacks Munich, they happened the first time in the same building, but in another location. It was completely overcrowded. And then I booked the largest room on the Airhacks on the airport Munich with a nice view, and then the real Airhacks started. So this was the short story of the Airhacks workshops, which are right now online only. And why? Since pandemic, of course, we're online, but the problem is there were so many registrations from all over the world, from USA, for instance, that I don't think if I will switch back to Munich airport, people will just come because, so maybe I could do, the winter edition and airport again. So usually it was lots of fun with winter market, and yeah, we could try once, right? So, yeah, exactly. So what this will happen, Airhacks Live, there will be workshops, online workshops, in summer, one about how to integrate and work with LLM and, of course, Java. And the other one is how to use the NoSQL database like DynamoDB with serverless Java. So this is going to be online. Okay, so we have that. And now, very first question. And the very first question is what I get all over the time. For instance, it asked me, okay, as a part of migrating existing JAX-RS, and JAX-RS is the HTTP endpoint, to serverless architecture, it's a good decision to use frameworks like Quarkus instead of plain Java. I assume this is a question. And the answer is yes. So I think as I started with the serverless Java, it was not, I would say, there was still, the idea that single-purpose tiny functions, even tinier and smaller than microservices should be used. But for Java, there's not a big downside using larger functions, and we can have even several hundred classes. And these several hundred classes could, for instance, be packaged in one zip and used, for instance, with Quarkus. So why we need Quarkus for such a thing? We need Quarkus because what Quarkus does, it translates an JSON HTTP event into JAX-RS invocation. This is why we need Quarkus or, for instance, Micronaut, such a framework. Without that, we will have to dispatch. So what we have to do is to parse JSON and say, if HTTP GET request with this parameters, call this method, exactly what we did in 1995 with JDK 1.0. So Quarkus is nice. But I'm using Quarkus only for this purpose. If I'm using asynchronous lambdas, asynchronous means I'm not listening to HTTP events rather than Event Bridge, SQS, SNS, DynamoStream events, Kinesis events, Kafka events, S3 events, then these lambdas are just plain POJOs, plain Java objects with a single method. And they receiving JSON object, which is more or less well specified, and do something with the data. So this is the answer to the very first question. And this was asked in the Discord Airhacks channel server. If you like, you can just join. It's this open server. I think there are already 600, how to call it? Not attendees, participants. Okay. And now let's see. Lenny had another, of course. Lenny is sponsored by Lombok, so he always asks questions, to introduce Lombok somehow into the project. And he asked me sneaky throws and extension methods. This is why he likes Lombok. And sneaky throws, I think, is a Lombok annotation which allows to convert, I think, throws runtime exceptions behind the scenes and makes the code cleaner. Yeah, maybe, but with Java 21, I'm happier with than ever. And I'm using, for instance, since Java 17, Java records, and the huge selling point for Lombok was getters and setters, but this is solved in many cases by Java records. Yeah. And Peter Ballas, really nice memories, right? So this was like, yeah, still thinking about the very first airhack shows. Okay. So I think we covered that. And so the next question is from Frank Z Tank, a nice name, and ask me how it make. Dirk Psy asked me why use Quarkus over Spring Boot. I think so. Quarkus. So what's the main difference is between Quarkus and Micronaut? Both are very similar, and everything else. So maybe, Spring Boot is sensitive, topic, but let's compare Quarkus and any applications that we like. So the difference is that what Quarkus does, it deploys at build time. So there are extensions. This is like dependencies, and what it does, for instance, if you need, let's say, if you need configuration. And the configuration is stored in XML. What Quarkus will do, will read the XML, generate bytecode, remove reflection, put everything to a simple class loader, and then you get very fast startup times, native compilation for everything, because every extension, Quarkus extension, has to be natively compilable, and and the fast startup types are important for me for serverless, because fast startup times reduce cold start. And yeah, that's basically it. So what Quarkus is, it is like almost Jakarta-y compatible runtime with smallest possible memory footprint, and the RAM consumption is smaller than empty Tomcat. So it is really small. So this is briefly Quarkus. This is why I use Quarkus. I could use Micronaut, but Quarkus is more compatible with my world, like microprofile. And Micronaut works similarly with annotation processing, and Quarkus works with extensions. So it means in the Micronaut case, Micronaut reads annotations, and the compiler plugins are generating highly optimized bytecode from metadata. And in Quarkus case, the highly optimized bytecode is generated by extensions. And Spring Boot or application server don't do that. They are small and efficient, but there's no such implementation in place, to my knowledge. Okay, and Helidon is another very fast runtime, but it does not come with the build time optimizations, for instance. Okay. So now I hope Psyvator, no, not Piator, sorry, Psyvator, you are happy with my answer. So and now Frank Zitank asked me, would it make sense if it is possible to use Lambda in front of backend cloud services as a kind of load balancing in front end? Take the data, map the data to model, push model to backend service processing. It makes sense. What you have to be aware of, that if the Lambda is not used for a longer period of time, the Lambda will come with cold start, which is with Quarkus, I would say 1 to 2 seconds. So the very first call will be 1 to 2 seconds. But if you don't like cold starts, you can set up the provision concurrency, and this Lambda is going to be always warm. There is no cold starts, and but if there are more and more parallel threads coming, then the Lambda is going to be scaled, and scaled means you get 2 parallel instances. And for every parallel instance, you can have potential cold start. So it really depends what you're doing in the backend. If the front end is like batch processing, it's perfectly viable. But if the front end is somehow latency sensitive, then it's not a good idea. Okay. Alex Nerd, hi Alex. So, but I forgot one half question here. So, what is the winning argument to use Java instead of Python in serverless architecture? And what I did, I'm back from a conference, and this conference is JAX. This is one of the largest German conferences, and this was the topic. You see how creative am I with topics? So everything was less. And by the way, this is the roots of airhacks. Airhacks Industries is just fun. But what I think I mentioned the last time, there are already 500 shorts recorded as well. So if you like Java, you can listen 500 minutes of shorts. But what I really wanted to show you is another slide. This was one of my dream machines, Sun Starfire 18K. And this is a pretty cool newer machine. It's called Oxide. So you can buy it right now. But what I actually wanted to show you is this. And what this is a study. You can go here. This is the URI here. Maybe it works. I will put it to chat. Let's see. So this is the advantage of be a live viewer. Hopefully it works. Sometimes from PDF, you know, it doesn't work. So if there are strange characters, then but you should find the study. And the question was, why use Java for serverless? And what it says, this is the performance, and this is the energy consumption. And if you see, Java is number 5 after C, Rust, C++, ADA, and Java. So C, interesting language. But interestingly, if you take a look at Go, it is significantly slower and consumes more energy as Java. And if you consider something like Python, so it is 35 times slower. 35 times slower than Java, and consumes 35 times more energy. So if you take a look on this, you will see Java is actually pretty good for the clouds. So you can save money and is energy efficient. And but if you take a look at the memory consumption, you see that Java is not this interpreted Java. Interpreted Java means if you start Java on JVM, Java Virtual Machine, you will see that it doesn't do well with memory-wise. So Pascal, Go, or C are significantly, or Fortran are significantly smaller than Java. But if RAM is the problem, you can use GraalVM, and then Java should be as good as Go or C. It's just natively compiled. Having said that, I never use GraalVM for serverless on AWS, and reason being is on, for instance, AWS, you have to buy CPU with RAM. So usually, to save money, we buy one CPU, which is reasonably fast, and it comes with 2 gig of RAM. So our Quarkus gets 2 gigs of RAM to have one CPU. We get fast startup time. No startup times, fast execution time, because at startup time you get, I think, 2 CPUs anyway. But our Quarkus consumes only 80 megs, so we have more RAM than we can consume. So this is the reason why I think Java is great for the clouds. So and actually the talk was well received, because there were lots of attendees, and I asked them, what's the reason not to use Java serverless, and there were no arguments against. So So now, okay, Alex Nerd says he would like to learn Pascal now to be serverless, of course, and then of course learn Pascal first, and then you could use the Turbo Pascal to be even faster, right? So, okay. I think we do this the push model for service processing. So, and this makes Frank Zitang. This could be even more interesting for lambdas which are listening to Kafka queues, Kafka topics, or SNS or SQS. Then would make absolute sense for interactive lambdas. While user is waiting for the or interactive for synchronous lambda, it could makes more less sense. An excellent question from Zenf left. What's Zenf left? I think this is Alex, right? I guess, no? But he asked me, you are avoiding usage of reactive frameworks in your projects. Absolutely. I don't like the programming model, and with Project Loom or Virtual Thread, it is not needed. How do you approach scenarios where calling several external servers in AWS Lambda when you need to return data from several DynamoDB tables? Or when you need to return data from several HTTP REST services? Okay, this is a good question. So DynamoDB usually, not usually, DynamoDB is very fast. So what it means is in DynamoDB you have latency under 10 milliseconds usually. So it is not worth. But what I had problems with S3. The problem is if you go to S3 and you will try to read, let's say 10 objects let's say you would like to read 10 objects, so you have 10 keys, and every access is roughly 30 milliseconds. So what means is if you read, let's say 100 objects, you will have to wait 3 seconds, which is way too long. So what you could do is to read the objects in parallel, and this is then left question. So how to do that? And what works well is you could use parallelStream. So you can use you can have a stream of keys, parallel stream of keys, then map each slot, and map goes to S3 and resolves the key with the object. And the cool story is with the parallel stream there is a setting called fork join parallelism, and you can specify how parallel the parallel stream actually is. Or you can even configure this per invocation, because you can submit the entire parallel stream to fork join pool. And I actually would like, I think next week I will try to record shorts about that, exactly 2 shorts, how to how to configure the parallelism, because I got also some questions regarding this. So I would say then left, if you would like to go to DynamoDB, I think you don't need anything. You can have a first parallel stream. There's a stream of keys, it could be keys, and you can even use HTTP client and go synchronously to call out something, and gather the results. Then you can have flat map or whatever you like, right? So this would be my first take, and the second one, the first attempt, and the second one would be indeed using CompletableFuture. And you don't have to use DynamoDB async client. So by the way, what is not needed, or there's some misunderstanding. If you have, I think it doesn't make any sense to make one single Lambda method asynchronous, because if you call Lambda and this is asynchronous, the Lambda will either quit or exit and kill the thread, or will have to wait anyway until the thread completes. So there is no cost savings in such a thing. What you could achieve that the user gets a little bit earlier the response, but you will have to pay for the request anyway. So I think it is what makes sense is to have a parallel execution to fetch data in parallel. So let's say you have 100 keys, 100 threads. You go at the same time to the S3. By the way, I got recently a throttling problems with S3 because I had more than 1,500 threads and I get throttled. So it should be less than 1,500 threads to S3. You go there, and and instead, if you have 100 keys, you get the answer in roughly 30 milliseconds and not 3 seconds, which is a huge difference. I hope I explained it well. Okay, now, is it a good idea to use Epsilon for serverless? Epsilon? I don't see this because of the icon. I don't know what Epsilon is, or Epsilon, the heart here. I don't know what Epsilon for serverless means. I never worked with Epsilon, I have to say. I have only experience with Java and Quarkus. Okay, now, also interesting question. There's a YouTube comment. What is the purpose of Serializable? And I will also record a short about that. And so what I have here, I have here a class. This short is, I think it was published today even. And this is implement Serializable. And I got a question, why we need Serializable? And this is a very good question, because if we take a look here, there is no method specified. And what Serializable is, it is an instance of a pattern called marker interface. So what you can do, what happens with serializable is you are adding a type serializable to def, and now the def is serializable. It means it comes with additional power or capability, and this is called marker interface. What I think that if Sun or Oracle would design serializable right now with Java 21, I think they will use annotation for it. I think right now annotation serializable would make more sense than implements serializable, because yeah, it is like, if we have a Java class in JPA entity, we put the add entity annotation in the Java class and there is no interface. But serializable was invented or introduced in JDK 1.1, and JDK 1.1 was 1996, 1997, so a long time ago. Okay, cool. So we covered the serializable. Epsilon GC, to use Epsilon GC for serverless. Hey, even worse, Abkhazi, Dimitri, sorry, is your first name, the GC. I actually, in some projects, we completely deactivate the garbage collector. You don't need a garbage collector on Lambda. If you think about this, the Lambda remains hot, I don't know, for maybe at most half an hour or whatever, right? And we have 100 meg, which Quarkus consume, and we have 2 gigs to consume. So what it means is, even if the Lambda gets out of memory error, it gets killed and new Lambda gets started. So actually, for Lambda, you can absolutely deactivate 0 garbage collector. You don't need anything. And there was one garbage collector, I forgot the name. It was not Epsilon. There's one garbage collector which does nothing. It was like 0 GC or something like this. Yeah, Lenny, if the Epsilon is the no-op, this is what I meant. So we need the no-ops garbage collector for Lambda. Could work. If you get, 2 CPUs, you get 4 gigs of RAM. Your Quarkus consumes 100 megs. So what it means is how long you can survive, with 3.9 gigs of RAM. And if the Lambda gets killed by an out-of-memory error, again, you get other Lambda anyway. And I think the chances are higher that you get new Lambda because of inactivity or whatever, then it's not a problem. So I don't do it in my projects because serverless is fast enough, but you could try it if you would like, to improve performance. Go for it. And if you have Lambda under heavy load, you will, save money for sure. I mean, this is every millisecond counts. There's millisecond precise billing. So most of my enterprise projects, we don't pay anything. So it doesn't matter, right? So, or 10 euros a month or whatever. Actually, at the JAX conference, there was a gentleman, and we met on another conference called WJAX. And what he said is that he implemented an Lambda microservice with Quarkus, and is used by a huge company. It was a chemical firm. There's a huge company. He says the entire company access that. They have a constant load, and they're paying like 10 euros a month. So this is what I can tell you. Okay, and costs are everything. So, okay, and what I forgot to show you is the parallelStream method, where you can parallelize access to DynamoDB or S3, and of course you can combine it with async client if you like, but this is not even needed. Okay, to airhacks TV. So how Kotlin happened. If you like Kotlin, you can is this interesting episode with Anton, a nice guy. But what also interesting is I had a chat with the founder of Azul Systems, and what I was interested, there was a chat about the Vega Java CPUs, and this was fun as well. There's also some episodes in the pipeline. So if you like. And also about Java and AI integrations. Okay, now what we have here is the time machine. So this is these were the questions from the 22nd edition of EXTV in 2016. So it was January of 2016. So 8 years ago. Makes sense. 8 multiplied by 12 is 96. So it was roughly 100 episodes ago. And And so I got questions about shiny new server. Hard to tell what it is, maybe Payara, but Java E progress. And wait a second, maybe, oh, we can go here. Look at that. So what are the questions? What are Maven best practices when handling multi-module projects? So interesting is, what we do right now is the opposite. In the serverless projects, we pack multiple lambdas to absolute one function zip without any structure. It's just one zip and it works perfectly, which is interesting. But this is a long one. Java is in whitefly. Okay, this is you see, interesting question. Which Linux, which JVM version? Interesting questions, right? If you think about this 10 years ago. So what you will do right now, lots of the questions already asked, 64, which Linux? So I will pick whatever is the default, on Amazon it will be the Amazon Linux, the recent one. Hardware, which server RAM size? So in Lambda, 1 CPU, 2 gigs. Server, harder to size, right? So I would add 2 CPUs maybe. It really depends on the traffic. So you see, this is the first problem. If I would have to size, Kubernetes or Fargate, it is way easier than Lambda. And bandwidth is basically, there's no question about bandwidth, right? Because you have to pay for bandwidth, but you cannot just buy better bandwidth. Cool. What is the difference between GMS and WebSockets? Nice one, right? WebSockets, I think, more popular than ever. So right now, you can push via WebSocket content to front ends, and GMS is abstraction of. I actually use derivatives of GMS. For instance, SQS is our topics and SQS are queues and SNS are topics. So AWS SQS would be queue and SNS would be topic, and Kinesis would be also a topic, and Kafka is also a topic. So what GMS is like an abstraction of all the services, and WebSockets is technology implemented in a browser. So it is hard, to push, or impossible to push SQS to a browser. You could do web push, but not, for instance, SQS or SNS. But you can do it with WebSockets. Okay. How do you make a migration from PLSQL to Java E? Okay, this is PLSQL and Java E. You need to migrate tables. You see this? You asked me about Quarkus and Spring, right? 10 years ago or 8 years ago, I got the same question. If you want to compare Spring to Java E, what will be the performance part? You see, right now we could say Quarkus, but back then you cannot answer this directly because Java E were like 5 different application servers. There is no Java E product. Java E is just its spec. Look at that. Do you recommend using search engines like Elasticsearch? You see how old this actually is. Elasticsearch is also highly popular right now. So right now I will suggest OpenSearch maybe. It's completely open source, right? So, and I was in France Java user group, but only once. Oh, this one, VoIP service. So right now it's hard, but back then there was WebLogic for VoIP service, and right now it's hard actually. You see, in Munich airhacks, so this is someone who also attended the workshops, mentioned Keycloak for securing AngularJS in Java is 7. So meanwhile, Keycloak is great on premise. In the cloud, I use something which ships with the cloud, like for instance Cognito, or on Azure is the Identity Manager or Azure ID, I think is the name. And why that? Because if you have Keycloak, you have to patch and run and operate Keycloak. Genau. And auth token via REST API, now it's solved problem with microprofile JWT. And we're still doing this actually. So, okay, these were the questions, 8 years old questions. So, are there any questions? No questions. Then I would call it a show. the 122nd show. I hope I covered everything. Didn't forget anything. And I would say see you in June or in summer at the airhacks live workshop with a little bit of, show topic AI, but I would say from the enterprise angle, and also NoSQL. So I would say thank you a lot. See you next month or in projects, conferences. Bye.